They told us civilization began with farming, with written language, with stone tools and river valleys. But what if we were wrong? What if beneath our feet, buried deep in the sand and rock, lies the truth of a world far older than history dares to remember? A city not just forgotten, but erased. This is not a myth, not a conspiracy. This is the story of a lost world that vanished 10,000 years ago. For a moment, everything was silent. Only the wind brushed against the empty desert that stretched endlessly under the burning sun. Dr. Elias Munro removed his dusty helmet and stared into the narrow shaft that went 50 meters straight down. They weren't supposed to find anything yet. According to satellite data, the chamber was buried at least 200 meters deeper. And yet, something had stopped the drill. "What did we hit?" he asked, wiping sweat from his brow. "Not rock," replied Kamal, his lead technician. "It felt hollow, like a chamber." Dr. Munro felt his stomach twist. They were in the Rub al-Khali, the empty quarter of Arabia. For centuries, the sands had hidden secrets too old for any written language to record. Bedouin tribes spoke of places that swallowed entire caravans. Now, standing at the edge of this mysterious hole, Munro wondered if those stories were more than just folklore. The ground beneath them was trembling, softly, almost imperceptibly. Then they heard it. Sound. It wasn't the groan of shifting earth, or the collapse of a tunnel. It was rhythmic, repeating, voice, muffled, faint. Nobody spoke. Munro slowly stepped back from the edge. Kamal crossed himself without realizing it. The younger crew members glanced at each other, unsure whether to run or listen harder. One of the interns, Nadia, dropped her water bottle into the shaft. There was no sound of impact. Seconds passed. Then the earth exhaled. A gust of hot air burst out of the shaft, carrying a scent so ancient it felt alien. The kind of smell that came from things buried too long. Stone, metal, and something that smelled almost organic. Nadia coughed and fell to her knees, clutching her head. Her ears were bleeding. "I heard them," she whispered. "Speaking. They're not gone." That night, none of them slept. Not because of what they found, but because the voice didn't stop. Kept echoing from below. And it was calling their names. The sand around the shaft was no longer still. It pulsed, faint like breath from the lungs of a buried beast. The wind no longer touched the tents. Silence clung to the camp like dust. Dr. Elias Munro stood before the hole, staring into its darkness, while engineers lowered a remote camera into the unknown. The screen in front of him flickered with static. Then, images began to appear. Stone. Not natural rock, but carved blocks, precise and symmetrical. Walls, archways, staircases winding into blackness. The camera caught strange etchings, symbols, neither Arabic nor Egyptian. Some looked vaguely like eyes. Others like spirals or twisted humanoid figures. The feed cut out for 3 seconds. When it returned, the camera was tilted, showing what looked like an open plaza. In the center, a monolithic sculpture of something that did not resemble any known creature. Had 7 limbs, a head like a crescent moon, and wings made of stone spikes. Kamal gasped. "That's not human." Elias didn't respond. His fingers trembled as he zoomed in. Around the statue were stone pillars, each carved with scenes of cities, oceans, and stars. One showed a city being swallowed by sand. Another showed people walking into the sea, and never coming back. "What if this isn't from our time?" Nadia murmured, her eyes fixed on the screen. "What if it's not even from our world?" The ground shook again. Not an earthquake, more like a heartbeat. And then came the dust. From the shaft, a sudden plume of fine black sand sprayed upward like a geyser, coating everything in its path. The fine particles clung to skin like soot and smelled of old copper and rot. Nadia screamed. It wasn't the dust. It was what lay inside it. Tiny fragments of bone. Human but wrong. Elongated skulls. Teeth too many in number. And one piece, a half jaw, that still had gold embedded in the molars. From a time before metallurgy. Seal it, Kamal shouted. Seal the hole. But it was too late. The voice from below had changed. It was no longer just speaking. It was chanting. An expert in dead languages, she had spent years decoding cuneiform, linear A, and scripts etched into obsidian tablets from forgotten mountain temples. But what she saw in the desert left her silent for over an hour. The symbols carved into the underground chamber were beyond any known route. They weren't pictographs. They weren't phonetic. Some changed shape when light hit them from different angles. Others shimmered as if alive. When Nadia approached them, one of the carvings pulsed under her touch. It's not just writing, Marlowe whispered. It's reactive. They brought up samples. Small tablets taken from near the statue in the plaza. Each one was colder than the desert air, even after hours in the sun. One of the tablets vibrated when held. Another emitted a high-pitched tone when dipped in water. The team set up a temporary lab tent just outside the main excavation. Elias, Marlowe, Nadia, and 2 other researchers worked day and night, comparing symbols with ancient scripts, sound patterns, and astronomical charts. Then, on the 4th night, the breakthrough came. Dr. Marlowe played an audio file through the speaker, a digital recreation of one of the carved symbols' supposed phonetic rhythm. It was a low, warbling hum, almost like a chant. Without warning, the sand near the shaft shifted. Then the wind stopped completely. Every light in the camp blinked once, then returned. And in the darkness, a ripple spread across the sky. Not a cloud, but something else. Shimmer. Like the surface of disturbed water. Inside the lab tent, one of the tablets cracked open. Not shattered. Cracked neatly down the center, revealing a core of glowing dust. Inside that dust, Nadia swore she saw moving shapes. Figures. Cities. Stars. They were recording something, she breathed. Memories. Not in words, in form. Suddenly, the speakers activated by themselves. The same hum echoed across the site. But this time it was no longer a recording. It was answering back. The symbols on the walls inside the shaft began to glow faintly. The chamber was waking up. The message on the tablet was traced to one location. A mountain 300 kilometers south of the excavation site. Jebel al-Rumi. A place so old, even the oldest Bedouin legends warned not to sleep near its base. They called it the Silent Horn, for it neither echoed nor sang with wind like other peaks. Elias led a small team, Nadia, Marlowe, Kamal, and a satellite technician named Haroun. They flew in by helicopter, landed near a narrow pass, and hiked to a ridge that overlooked the valley beneath. And there, half buried in rock and sand, was something that should not have been there. Structure. Massive. Angular. Covered in vines and ash-gray dust. It resembled a ship, but not one built for water. There were no sails, no rudders, no hull. Just long, wing-like protrusions and a body made entirely of fused stone and metal. From above, it looked like an arrowhead made by titans. What kind of ship sails underground? Kamal asked. Haroun adjusted the drone cam. Or crashes into a mountain. They approached with caution. The outer surface of the structure was warm to the touch. No signs of doors or seams except one, a vertical slit the size of a man, partially concealed by hanging moss. When Marlowe stepped close, the moss receded. The slit opened. A breath of cold, stale air escaped, followed by the faint chime of wind, though none blew outside. Inside, the walls shimmered with the same material as the tablets. But here, the symbols weren't carved, they moved. Slowly. Like oil swirling under glass. At the center of the chamber was a single chair. Not wooden or metallic. Carved from a single black stone that pulsed faintly. The backrest curved upward, and along its spine were grooves shaped like fingers. Too many fingers. Marlowe approached the wall and pressed her palm to a cluster of moving symbols. The room responded. The ship or whatever it was came alive. Every wall glowed faintly. The air shifted, as though the atmosphere itself changed. The symbols floated off the walls and circled them in slow spirals, wrapping around their heads like language reborn. Then the lights dimmed. And from the chair came a sound. Not mechanical, not natural. Voice. Slow, cold, and layered, like many mouths speaking at once. Marlowe froze. Her lips trembled. It knows we're here. The structure, whatever it was, had sealed itself after they exited. The entrance vanished, as if the stone reabsorbed it. Back at base camp, the voice from the excavation had changed again. It wasn't chanting anymore. It was speaking words. Recognizable ones. Ancient languages. Akkadian, Proto-Sumerian, and something even older. Marlowe called them time-layered tongues, fragments of languages lost before the first human cities were ever built. Elias could only think of one explanation. The structure wasn't just a vessel. It was a vault of memory. The team's next lead came from deep radar scans. Beneath the excavation site beyond the plaza was a passage that dipped sharply. A spiral tunnel leading into a chamber 500 meters below surface level. It was too dangerous to drill further. But one natural cave nearby connected to the lower levels. The tribes in the region called it Algar, the Forbidden Mouth. The team descended with portable lights and oxygen packs. The deeper they went, the less sound carried. Even the crunch of boots seemed swallowed by the walls. Inside they found carvings. Not on the walls, in the air. Holograms. Suspended glyphs of blue light. Floating. They were surrounded by symbols that reacted to their movement. The moment Nadia stepped into the circle at the chamber's heart, all lights turned to her. Then came the figures. Not ghosts. Not hallucinations. They were tall. Draped in robes made of shimmer and dust. As like black mirrors. They circled her but did not speak. Haroun began recording. But his camera failed. So did his watch. So did time. Outside the chamber, 10 minutes passed. Inside, the team experienced hours. When they emerged, they were pale. Eyes wide. Voices soft. Something had been shown to them, something about the beginning. About memory. About cycles of destruction and rebirth. Elias could only whisper one sentence. They are the Timekeepers. There was more. Beneath the shifting dunes west of the excavation site, buried under thousands of years of sediment, lay geometric patterns. Too perfect to be natural. A grid. Roads. Foundations. City. Bigger than anything from recorded history. Bigger than Mohenjo-Daro, Babylon, or even ancient Thebes. Elias stared at the topographic overlays in disbelief. The city had no rivers, no ports, no defensive walls. It wasn't made for survival. It was made for memory. They named it Al-Zahir, the Unseen. What they uncovered first was a gateway. A massive arch that once stood 30 meters tall, now broken in 3 pieces and buried at odd angles. Along its surface, etched in deep silver lines, was a date. But not in any human calendar. Marlowe converted the symbols. Her hands shook as she translated. 10,000 years before the first known civilization. Before writing. Before agriculture. Before history. Inside the ruins, they found chambers of black glass and obsidian floors. Buildings without doors. Walls that hummed with magnetic current. Frescoes that depicted constellations in unfamiliar skies. The stars were positioned differently, as if seen from another time, or another part of the earth, or farther. In the central temple they found a mural. Sequence. First, a great flood swallowing the world. Second, a tower collapsing as people looked to the stars. Third, a line of figures descending underground, carrying orbs of light. And the fourth, silence. Beneath the mural was a pit. Perfectly circular. Smooth as if cut by lasers. Kamal dropped a flare into it. It burned blue. Then it vanished. They lowered a sensor probe. The data that came back made no sense. According to the instruments, the pit was deeper than the Earth's crust. It was a tunnel. A straight tunnel to somewhere far below. Or maybe somewhere else. Then came the vibrations. Not from machines. From something moving. Elias looked around the ancient temple and realized. The city was not abandoned. It was sealed, and something inside was waking up.